What's going on, everybody? I welcome you to a new situation where I have a webcam on, and it should be in 1080p. I don't know if it is. We're gonna find out though. Anyways, today we have some really interesting stuff to talk about. There were pre-patch notes that were just released a little bit ago, so we're gonna take a look at these, and I want to go over these with you because they really impact the future of characters you're building for this next patch, and maybe even a patch after that. So if we go over to the in-game notice section, we're going to be able to check out all these game updates. And here is the 1.5 update notice. So this is the important stuff. So we have all this really cool stuff coming in. We have the Serenity Pot, which is the new housing thing. We have Trust Rank, Adeptal Energy, I don't know, just tons of different stuff. We know Eula is coming out this next patch. Eula's going to be on the second half of the patch, and we know that she's pretty much a physical damage character with some cryo weaved in there. She could end up doing both fairly well, but she does have an emphasis on physical damage, similar to characters like Xinyan and Razor. In addition to that, we're seeing a new domain open up that drops physical damage-based artifacts. And then after that, if you look at Spiral Abyss, which is currently the hardest content in the game, you can see that a bunch of the challenges or buffs have essentially changed to be physical damage-based. So, one of the changes is physical damage dealt by all party members increased by 75% on the floor 11 notice. I'm not sure if that applies to the rest of Spiral Abyss, probably not, but we know that 11, which was the hardest floor by a lot, now gives a physical damage buff. It also updates the monster lineup on floor 11 and 12. We'll talk about the monsters in a second because that's a really important part. Phase 1 is the Blade Dance Moon, and that makes it so that when a character scores consecutive hits on an opponent with normal attacks within 2 seconds, this character's physical damage is increased by 5% for 10 seconds and can stack up to 5 times. Only 1 stack is added at a time, regardless of how many enemies are hit on 1 strike. When 5 stacks are obtained, further hits on opponents will unleash shockwaves that deal AoE damage. So basically, if you're running physical damage, you're just going to get a ton of damage buffs over time, and if you're using a character that attacks fast, specifically someone like maybe physical damage Kaching or Jean or anyone with like a normal sword that uses normal attacks is going to thrive in this kind of environment. So that just means that people with physical damage are going to have an easier time in Spiral Abyss, which is really dang cool. I'm not really sure what Phase 2 has to do with much, but we do know Phase 3 also is another thing encouraging you to use physical damage by increasing your crit rate whenever you do a normal charged or plunging attack that deals physical damage. So essentially, they really want you to pull for Eula. They're saying, hey, we're releasing this new character that does mostly physical damage, and she looks really cool when she attacks, and she's waifu, and waifu over meta. So roll on this character, and you're gonna roll the Spiral Abyss now because it's just all physical damage buff. They have a history of doing this with every character. The Spiral Abyss always caters towards the banner characters whenever they change up the enemies in it. Speaking of enemies, the enemies in Spiral Abyss will be changing to humanoid characters mostly. At least on floor 12, we know we're gonna see some like Abyss Herald-esque kind of characters. I think it's called Abyss Lector, but essentially, if you don't know, humanoid characters in this game take extra damage to physical damage. That's why when you see showcases with Jean, Razor, Xinyan, all these sorts of physical damage based characters, they all are against humanoids so that they can buff their attack more. So that's even more incentive to use physical damage. Now what I find really interesting about this in particular is that reaction damage is always going to be king because of its ability to multiply so much, right? But by doing this to Spiral Abyss, they're really trying to force a meta shift. I don't really understand having a meta in a PvE game for the most part, but like I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to sell a product, right? So they want you to all go all in on physical damage. But essentially, it's important to recognize that meta doesn't necessarily mean best. It just means most used. So when we talk about a physical damage meta and how they're shifting over to a physical damage meta, that just means that most people are going to switch to physical damage because that's what's efficient in Spiral Abyss. However, it will be interesting to see if this kills elemental reaction teams in Abyss. My guess is no. Elemental reactions are far too strong to be outdone by a couple multipliers on physical damage. I don't think it's going to make a change. However, it will make Eula look really good. So be advised when you're watching showcases for Eula and things, before you pull on her, see how she does outside of the Spiral Abyss, because the Spiral Abyss is going to be buffing everyone's damage to hell. Every single guide and showcase that you see, including mine if I decide to do one, is going to be preying off of those buffs. So it won't be an actual reflection of her damage. But yeah, that being said, I personally don't think physical damage meta is going to last past Spiral Abyss. I don't think people are going to use physical damage that often past it just because of its limitations. I think it's worth leveling up a physical damage character if you're not going to be getting Eula. I think if you have someone like Razor, Xinyan, if you have Kaching, you can switch her from Electro to physical if you haven't done that yet. Jean will be a lot stronger. Like if you also just consider the fact that we're getting another physical damage set with the Pale Flame set, and that you're going to be able to stack Bloodstain and Pale Flame physical damage bonuses, it would be a good idea to do that for one Spiral Abyss team, or if you already have a physical damage character built, start investing into their talents. I think the direction this game is going has to do with physical damage. I don't think it'll last forever. I think in 1 or 2 patches, the focus on physical damage will just disappear. disappear entirely. That doesn't mean physical damage will become obsolete, but I think that it's so hard to beat out multipliers on Vaporize and Melt that it's not really worth investing all into a bunch of physical characters just for Abyss. I would say maybe 1 or 2 physical carries at most, but even just 1 might be enough, because we got to remember that though physical damage will be stronger for a time, that doesn't necessarily mean that elemental damage with multipliers isn't going to beat it out. But yeah, looking at the characters that we may see actually prevail in Spiral Abyss more often, we're going to see probably a little bit of Kaya physical damage built just because he's free to play and he's already a pretty strong unit. Razor will also be very, very good. I think that Razor will be one of the top DPS picks that you'll see very often, and I'm interested to see if Jinyan comes out as one of the top picks as well. Because if Jinyan actually ends up being good, we'll see some love headed in her way outside of people like OK Code. The Kaching one is going to be really fun because basically all the people that were building super high octane Electro Kaching only have to switch artifacts because they already leveled their autos most likely. So you're going to try not to infuse, and then Kaching attacks very, very fast, so she's not going to have any trouble keeping that buff uptime. I also think that Jean is going to have a really easy time this Abyss if you try to build her physical. I think that she may even be able to make it to floor 12 and, you know, beat up some idiots. So I'm going to be taking my Jean here, and I'm going to be switching her over to 2 Bloodstained and 2 Pale Flame when that comes out, and that's it for another video because you guys really should look into that. It's going to be busted. But yeah, all these opportunities you have for physical damage building are going to really enhance your chance at Spiral Abyss this next time around. That being said, again, elemental reactions aren't dead. In fact, they're still very strong, and it is incredibly hard to beat out multipliers. Anyways, that's the direction that I believe this game is heading. I think that this is temporary. It's kind of like if you ever went through like an emo goth or like scene phase in your teens. It's going to be there for a little bit. It's going to be a little edgy. You're going to do a little bit of damage, and then it's going to be gone. So remember that when you're pulling for Eula, that numbers will be inflated in Spiral Abyss. But then again, waifu's over meta anyways, so...